She fielded a question about, you know, her billing herself as this progressive, but I guess having a very checkered, questionable past if you go back to her time as a DA in San Francisco and as the Attorney General in California. So let's play this clip and then we'll come back and talk about it.
You position yourself as aligned with the progressive movement to make criminal justice less punitive and racist, yet your record as a prosecutor shows that you embrace the tough on crime mentality. You've defended California's death penalty, and as California's Attorney General, your office opposed the release of nonviolent prisoners and violated the constitutional rights of various drug defendants. How do you reconcile your contradictory past with what you claim to support today?
I've been consistent my whole career. My career has been based on an understanding, one, that as a prosecutor, my duty was to seek and make sure that the most vulnerable and voiceless among us are protected. And that is why I have personally prosecuted violent crime that includes rape, child molestation, and homicide. And I have also worked my entire career to reform the criminal justice system, understanding, to your point, that it is deeply flawed and in need of repair, which is why, as Attorney General, for example, I led the Department of Justice, which is the largest state Department of Justice in any state, in California, and implemented the first of its kind in the nation implicit bias and procedural justice training for police officers. It is why I created the first in the nation for any Department of Justice an open data initiative that we named Open Justice, for the first time making transparent and showing the public statistics around deaths in custody, arrest rates by race, and making that information available to the public. I instituted a policy around requiring the agents who worked in my division, which is the first of its kind for a state agency, to wear body cameras. I created an initiative back when I was DA, and this is when, by the way, this is the 90s and the early 2000s, where you could talk to DAs around the country and you'd mention the word reentry and they didn't know what you were talking about. This is when there was a tough on crime mentality, and I created one of the first in the nation initiatives that was focused on re-entering former offenders by getting them jobs and training and counseling. And it ended up being something that, thankfully, in these ensuing 15 years, is something that is regularly talked about by district attorneys. But back when we created this, that was not happening. On the issue of the death penalty, I am personally opposed to the death penalty. I've always been opposed to the death penalty. And that's not going to change.
Those responses were good. Now, when you actually take a look into her past, it's a mixed bag. There are some positives, and she did spit out some of them. The diversion programs, the implicit bias training.
We can't deny those things.
Can't deny those as well at all. But then, again, so what are some things that we can add to that aren't quite so positive?
Actually, we did a story on it. I don't think Kamala was a part of it, but we talked about FOSTA, and now she supported that.
Right.
And that was a bill that would hold web publishers responsible for third-party ads for prostitution, which affects sex workers. Yes. And she supported that.
Right. Yeah. You heard her at the end of that clip say that she has always been against the death penalty. And again, that's a mixed bag too, because there was a point in time when she was DA that she did decline to go forward with the death penalty. But then when she was Attorney General, she argued in favor of it. And she said she had to do that because she was the Attorney General of California and it was on the books. It's a mixed bag. If you're a progressive DA or you're a progressive Attorney General, you do progressive things. You don't do establishment things. You just don't uphold the status quo. You actually make waves.
What about her view on prosecuting law enforcement officers?
Oh, yeah, that's not positive. That's not positive. She failed to do that. There were a number of times where there were some incidents where people felt like, yeah, these officers should be prosecuted, and she pretty much ignored it. So
probably because she wanted the support of police unions.
Yeah, and she has, and historically, she has always gotten the support of police unions, these police organizations. They have been one of her most loyal donors when she has been a DA or the Attorney General in California. So that's always a little bit discomforting when you see a candidate has the full backing of law enforcement. That's probably not going to be a progressive candidate. And I don't do that to just like shit on the institution of law enforcement, right? Because, like I always say, and I hate that I have to say it, when we talk about bad cops and bad policing, you know, bad actions by law enforcement, of course that doesn't stand for everybody. So we know that there are good individuals within this institution, right? But we also know that, again, like these police unions, these organizations, they will back up their officers no matter what they do. So if they're fully behind a candidate, it just doesn't speak to something that's good.
So yes, so it comes off as a payoff. It comes off as a payoff. Like, look, we're paying you so that we get in trouble. That payment acts as an insurance policy, so you don't go too hard on us. Right. That's what it appears to be.
That's what
and it's like, I think like people don't think of it as money in politics because it's not like a corporation do it, but that's what it is, because you have police unions paying these prosecutors off so that they do not have to face accountability or serious accountability when they fuck up.
Yeah. And then the body cams, you know, she said, you know, again, when she talked about the body cam, you know, that was true. But then she also said something about how there wasn't a one-size-fits-all solution in terms of all of California. So, and that was referencing body cameras, because of course there's for years there have been this effort for every single police officer that is out there interacting with the public to be wearing a body camera. And that's for transparency. That's so that we know what's happening in these altercations or any of these incidents, right? And they have been very, very important, because without them, we wouldn't know. That's how a lot of these cops have been caught and been prosecuted. Well, I won't say a lot, but anyway. But she said that, yeah, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and that just won't do it. Again, if you're a progressive, you want to ensure that there's transparency. That doesn't sound like a progressive at all.
That was her opportunity to kind of list what those those alternatives are. If that one size, you know, she says the one size doesn't fit all, then give me some other sizes.
Yeah, true, exactly, and I don't think she do.
If that's gonna be your answer, you better have something ready to throw out there that is an alternative solution.
There was also, you know, there was an effort in California to parole more people, and her office had argued against that. And she said that happened without her knowledge, because, you know, soon after that, she did make a statement saying that that's not, you know, that wasn't something that she was supportive of. So, you know, you can choose whether to hold her, you know, accountable for that or not. I don't know. I'll leave that there. Also, there's a video that's going around from back in 2010 where she was the district attorney of San Francisco, and she made some comments about truancy.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So, to that end, on my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
She seems pretty lighthearted talking about that.
A little giddy.
You know what? That's a better word. Giddy.
A little giddy.
You know, this town hall is kind of, all of it runs together. And I do remember her talking about black people. You know, or she didn't specifically say black people, but she talked about people who are affected by the criminal justice system more. She did make that a point.
Her parents
were civil rights. Yeah, like she basically said, what did she say? She said, I didn't have to look at the data to know that crime affected certain people. Like, I was like born with that knowledge. I was like, first of all, I don't care who the hell your parents are. You still have to look into things. Number two, if we're talking about this a particular, I guess, application of truancy laws, which is not isolated to, you know, her state. Okay, we'll just, you know, just throw that out there. Who is it going to affect more? With that type of approach, like, who does that affect more? Who do you think that's going to affect more?
Of course, people in poverty. More than anybody else.
And let's like play that out. Like, let's say that happens and the parents go to jail, right? Who is that going to affect?
The kids.
So it's like, so does that really solve the issue?
No. Like, again, like you mentioned, this isn't just about California. This isn't just about Kamala Harris. The biggest problem to me about this was that she was like so giddy about this. She was laughing about it, which it's not funny. It's like disgusting to actually see her like laughing about it. It's not funny. So I will, again, to just kind of expand on that, it's not just about California. You go through any state, you look up any state here in South Carolina, Massachusetts, Florida, Texas, you see any state and they have truancy laws. And the possible punishments for parents can range up to imprisonment. Not, you know, not like, we're not talking about like serious time, but yeah, prison time, days in jail, fines, $500, $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, people who are living in impoverished communities can afford fines like that.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure they can,
yeah.
right?
Nah, so I think that it's overly punitive. I don't think it's a good kind of strategy. You know, because a lot of these families that you're talking about, it's not like you're just dealing with a parent that's like, well, I don't care. You know, it's a little bit more in depth than that. And we're not going to go into all the type of situations that it can be.
Exactly, because you might be dealing with like a situation where they don't really have primary parents, or their primary parents are not fit. They don't have custody, or they're just, you know, just irresponsible and they're just off doing something. Maybe they're involved in crime. Maybe they have a drug problem. Maybe they're on the streets. Maybe that kid is staying with an aunt and uncle who don't really have the time who have their kids of their own, who always have the time to be on their, you know, their family members, their niece and their nephew's back. So you're right. It depends on the situation.
I don't want to be overly critical of her because of this law. Because it's all over the country. It's very regular. But when you're her, because look, she's a candidate for president now, so you have to assess who she is and her past. And so this is part of her past, her actually advocating for something like this. So when you talk about somebody like Stephen Mnuchin,
I know it's a weird name. It's a nasty name.
Yeah, it came out all wrong, all funky. Yeah. So when you talk about somebody like Stephen Mnuchin, who escaped any type of penalty while Kamala Harris was in charge in California. And he was guilty of like improper foreclosing on thousands of homes, right? So it seemed like, I've said it before, it seemed like they had him dead to rights, but there was no effort to go get him, right? So it just looks bad that you're trying to go after these impoverished families for truancy. And I agree that education is very important. That's very important when you're talking about lifting somebody up. You know, they do need education. So it's very important. But when you're talking about jailing them and fining them, But this very powerful individual named Stephen Mnuchin that was guilty of destroying people's lives, he got away scot-free.
And I don't recall ever seeing a video or any comments she made in which she displayed that same type of giddiness.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? For actions like that, not even just same kind of giddiness, but like any kind of serious position, taking a serious position on his criminal activity. Right?